America. Welcome to Friday. The final chapter begins of the Glenn Beck program. I announced a couple of weeks ago that I'll be leaving this 5 p.m. show. There are other things that I feel compelled to do. Honestly, I feel as though for about a year now, I have a strange relationship, and the cameraman, Oscar's usually the guy we use on the main camera for me. And we've talked about it before, and Aaron and I have talked about it before, that I have a strange relationship with you. I can feel you, and I look into the camera. And the thing that has been happening to me over the last year is I feel you say, we get it, we get it. Now what? Well, I have felt a responsibility to be the guy who's ringing the bell, but I don't think that there's going to get that we're not going to get anybody else into the boat at this point. I think now what we have to do is prepare to be different people. I do believe that these radicals have nefarious plans for our country and for us as a people, and we have a choice. We can either be swept up in it, or we can stand together and be an alternative. And it means more than just being Tea Party. It means reaching out in different ways and rolling up your sleeves and getting involved. It's what I told you at the beginning of the year, the first episode on this program. I told you I am tired of waiting and looking for someone to lead. So we have to take it on ourselves. But that doesn't mean that we, at least me, doesn't mean that I want to lead and run for any office. It's just time for me as a citizen to get involved more than I'm doing here, because now all I'm doing is preaching to the choir, it seems. I want to introduce you to a couple of people that are in the audience today. Kevin Williamson, he is the Deputy Managing Editor of National Review, author of The Politically Incorrect Guide to Socialism, a fantastic book. And Richard Poe is also with us. He is the co-author of Shadow Party, also a book you must read. These two gentlemen are here because we're going to try to cover some of the things that we have covered in the last 2 years. And you, as the audience, what I'd like to ask you to do is just raise your hand if you have something you want to interject. And I know you have a lot of questions that you have prepared, but what I'm asking you to do is tell me here, as we kind of start our final chapter on this program, to tell me the things that you don't understand or you want to know, or something has been nagging at you, or you think you need to go back and re-clarify. I want to make sure that we button everything up before we leave this 5 o'clock program. So that's your job. But let me show you the things that we have learned on this program. These two guys have done this kind of research for a long, long time. I haven't. 2 or 3 years ago, I was probably an awful lot like you, where I didn't really know what was going on. I had no idea what was happening, and I just knew something wasn't right. I knew it wasn't right back in 2004, when we started saying, hey, let's get everybody into these loans, and then we stopped paying attention to the border, and that didn't make any sense. And then we started to see the collapse and nobody would talk about it. And so I tried to figure things out. We've put these things together with the help of experts and just trying to make sense, because we've questioned with boldness. These are the people that we have found are surrounding the President of the United States. Richard Trumka, Andy Stern, a communist 9/11 truther. He denies it, but on 9/12, he was in one of the most ridiculous, spooky rallies you've ever seen. We've played the videotape before. 9/12/01, he was saying, America is getting what she deserves. Basically the same thing that this guy says. George Soros is really the king and the kingmaker. He's the guy with the money. He is the guy who has put so much of this stuff together. Media Matters for America. Is it Media Matters that was started with Hillary Clinton and George Soros money? Yes, right. Media Matters. Media Matters. The Apollo Alliance is the thing that we showed you right when we started. That was the, well, does anybody know what it was? What is the Apollo Alliance? Anybody remember? Pardon me? They wrote the stimulus package. Exactly right. They wrote the stimulus package. Do you remember what Apollo stands for? Why they named it the Apollo Alliance? Okay, they named it the Apollo Alliance, and it's really interesting, especially when you get into the Tides Foundation or anything offshoot of Center for American Progress. The Apollo Alliance, you look for names to mean something. Acorn starts small, a little seed, and grows into a mighty oak. Apollo, they said what they wanted was something that was dramatic, something that once you push the button to start, it would launch and you could not recall it. That's what the Apollo Alliance is. That's the stimulus package. Once they started it, you can't stop it. Into the fundamental transformation of America. We've been telling you for a while that Cass Sunstein is the most dangerous man in America. Can anybody tell me why I've said Cass Sunstein is dangerous? Yes, we have a microphone over here. Yes, Richard.
Because he's the one that actually writes the policy. He's the one that
writes the regulations.
Writes the regulations.
Right.
So basically, all Obama's policies, he actually enacts and puts them into law, puts them out there, and those are the rules that we as the people have to follow.
Okay. Now, how much regulation is there in healthcare? Just healthcare alone. Do you know, Kevin? What's the number of?
I know that something like 214 bills into law, but during the same year there were 2,700, a little more than that, final regulations, as they're known, final rules passed. So the regulatory apparatus is passing about 10 times as much output as the legislative process is.
Which makes Congress irrelevant. Remember on the program I said, Congress, remember the congressman, I don't remember which one it was, I think it maybe Jim DeMint maybe. It was Jim DeMint, where I looked at him and I said, you, sir, are in more trouble than you think. You're about to become irrelevant. And they are, because of Cass Sunstein. Who's he married to? Who knows this one?
Sam Powers.
Yeah, Sam Powers. Why is she scary?
That's a long list, but where do you want to start?
Why is she now in the spotlight? Can anybody tell me? Samantha Powers, the wife of Cass Sunstein. She's an advisor to the President of the United States. Do you know Josephine? Wait a minute. What is that?
She has Obama's ear. She's right next to him. And
she's next to him, and what is she encouraging him to do? What was her big policy? Responsibility. Yes, back here. Barbara?
He is a big threat. His ear is a big threat against Israel.
Okay, why?
She's pushing what you were calling, I can't read.
The responsibility to
yes,
protect.
Protect, exactly.
Okay, what is that? Anybody know? See, this is why it is so hard. You guys are an informed group of people. How many of you watch the show twice a week? Easy? Okay. You guys are an informed group of people. I noticed you two didn't raise your hands.
I got it like halfway.
And this is how they're succeeding. They're succeeding because, first of all, you look up this and you see all of these organizations, and it's easy to say it's a conspiracy theory. When I say to you the Apollo Alliance, most people don't even know what it is. And then when I say, well, the Apollo Alliance was really started by the Tides Foundation. And the Tides Foundation really starts with George Soros money and a bunch of other people, and that started to change the tide in America. Started during, you would probably know this better than I, started during the Reagan administration to make sure that the tide was changed in America, because they were afraid. They said, they've got all the corporations. The right has all the corporations. How are we going to ever fight that? How are we going to ever change the tide? We got to get inside and make ourselves legitimate. So these revolutionaries get in and start launching all of these programs. And it's a shell game. It's the same people. I think I said about 4 weeks ago in this program, it's really getting boring. I did this. I was standing at this chalkboard, and I took this magnet, and I said, what a surprise. It ends with him. It's getting boring. It's the same thing. Once you know the players, am I right, sir? Once you know the players, it's a tight little group, isn't it?
Well, especially considering that Samantha Powers is married to Cass Sunstein, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to say the answer to your question as to why she's significant is, as you pointed out, to America, because she likes war, and she sees war as a legitimate technique for pushing what she calls quote-unquote liberal agendas.
Right. That's not That's not some conservative hack saying that. That is, who was it that said that? It was written in The Nation. It was a real lefty.
That's right.
That came out and said...
Praising her for it.
Yeah, praising her, saying she understands that war can be used for radical change for the left's purpose. So when you say she has the ear of the president, it's the Responsibility to Protect Act. The president, you'll notice, didn't go in right away. He could have protected the people in Libya, if that's really our intent, but we waited and waited and waited and waited. Why did we wait? Why did we wait? Rich, over here.
United Nations first.
Had to go through the United Nations. Why would we go through the United Nations? What did they use at the United Nations? What was the president looking to trigger?
The Responsibility to Protect.
Yes, the Responsibility to Protect Act, which was done by her and released in a book. He sees it and says, this is fantastic. We're going to have to, I'll put all my money in it. We'll come up with a whole new entity for the Responsibility to Protect. Gets it kicked up into the United Nations. They've been trying it for a while. Nobody will bite. Well, once you have this guy in office, and this guy who works for this guy, you got all these players in office, now you can trigger it. And why is it important to trigger? Because once you trigger it, if countries have a responsibility to protect, and you have all of this going on, well, gee, don't they have a responsibility to protect the Palestinians against Israel? How about protecting the poor and unfortunate that are just coming over for a better life here in America? Is it a stretch to say the world would have a responsibility to protect against Texans or Arizonans that might say, hey, yes?
They only use it when it suits their own agenda.
Pardon me?
So they only use the Responsibility to Protect when it suits their own agenda.
Yes.
That's why they went to the UN. They could have done it earlier, but it was the guys that we were going in there to help Libya and to help Egypt. They could have done it much earlier.
Who here has the question? Because if you look at the radical leftist, communist, progressives in the unions, what they're doing is they are collapsing our banks. They're redesigning the globe. They're uniting Islamists for Sharia. This is amazing to me that they are standing with. Does anybody know what's happening in Washington this week with Hillary Clinton and with Barack Obama is there? I'm trying to remember. Eric Holder's also there. What is the name of this thing, Tiffany? Do you know the official name? They are having a big Muslim conference, Muslim World Conference. And we're meeting there to find out how we can help Muslims unite. It's the U.S. Islamic World Forum. I don't have a problem with that. But unfortunately, some of the people involved seem to be extreme Islamists that are for Sharia. Meanwhile, our president is telling us, don't watch regular TV. Al Jazeera is the one in the White House. In the State Department, Hillary Clinton says, hey, we love it. Because it doesn't have commercials, it doesn't have commercials, and it doesn't have anybody arguing on it. Well, without commercials, wait a minute, that sounds like this guy's plan. And this plan, free press. This is a guy from the FCC. No commercials. Let's push NPR. Let's make sure that we have a free press, net neutrality, which leads to this guy. This guy who says people are just going to have to step down from their jobs so you can give somebody else a chance. That's what I'm doing. That's why I'm leaving, because I'm just going to give somebody else a chance. So it's a nasty, nasty rat's nest, and it really all comes down to this: redistributing the wealth for half of them. I believe half of them. I think this guy believes in redistribution of wealth. I believe this guy believes in redistribution of wealth. This guy believes in redistribution of wealth. That's probably it. Maybe this guy, I'm not sure. This guy is just a communist. This guy's just a happy regulation guy. These guys, I think they're just in it for the money and corrupt. This guy is as well. I have no idea what his intentions are. This guy's a guy who went to jail. He was writing the whole strategy. I mean, it's an amazing thing, but the question that I think is, why?
This system comes crashing down.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen to these people that brought this system down? And the American people are pissed when they lose everything they have.
Anybody want to answer that question? What do you think is going to happen? That's a great question. What do you think is going to happen? Anybody?
In terms of them paying a price for it, nothing.
Nothing?
No.
Why?
Nothing. Because they never do. I mean, that's the sort of story of the political class. Is one of the nice things about being a member of the political class is you're insulated from the effects of your actions. I mean, you look at things like what happened with the housing market crisis and all that. The people who actually were responsible for that mostly got away without any sort of criticism, much less investigation, the charges or things like that. Whereas people are talking about banker pay and these sorts of secondary issues at best. And the real culprits, like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which are really at the center of it, are still there and still on federal support and will be forever.
I don't think the average person has paid what you're saying. We haven't paid the real price. A lot of people are still in denial that this thing's going to come apart.
When it comes crashing down, and the American people get pissed, sorry about the word, there's going to be a second revolution in the country. And I would not want to be in their place.
Really? Now, see, that's really interesting to say that, because that works to the advantage of this guy, of this guy, of this guy, oops, of this guy, certainly of these two, responsibility to protect. It works to the advantage of this guy. It works to the advantage of this guy. This guy is the one who's trying to bring down the banks right now. See, there's two people, and Richard, you might be the one to answer this question. There's two classes of people, I think, in this. There are the true revolutionaries, the people who believe it, who are like, yes, communism and redistribution of wealth, and get them, because the bankers are all bad. And then there are the controllers. Then there are people like George Soros. George Soros, what doesn't make sense to me, didn't for a long time, is why would George Soros do this? Why would he collapse the system? How?
Money. In fact, there was a piece in the 90s on a show called Adam Smith when I first learned what they called the killer bees. And that was how he made the money off of the British pound. And he did the same thing by undermining the system. And that's what he seemed to be doing in other cultures, and he wants to do it to America.
Okay, now let me ask you this. Let's tie this in. I agree with you. He makes money. Okay. But nobody really makes money in the Gaza Strip. Right? Why?
There's just fighting. There's unrest all the time.
Fighting and unrest. If communists went and tried to collapse the system and took over the system, okay, what would happen? Richie, how long would you fight?
I'd fight till I died.
Okay, who would not fight for the rest of your life if somebody overthrew the Constitution of the United States? Would you? Oh, raise your hand. Would you fight? Would you fight for the rest of your life and give your life if someone overthrew the government of the United States? So, we know that, and there are millions of people that would do that. Well, George Soros is smart enough to know that, isn't he?
Of course, because he's done these overthrows in many other countries where many other people were patriotic and willing to fight. And I hesitated, I have to say, in raising my hand because I don't know what I would do. The fact is, we all would like to believe we would fight and fight to the bitter end, but in most cases, they kill off the real fighters pretty quickly, and then the other people get in line, and the people who've done these overthrows, such as Mr. Soros and company have done in many countries throughout the world, they tend to succeed. They tend to succeed because people want to get on with their lives. They don't want to die.
They succeed for that reason, and I want to show you something else that came to me about Roman history that is important. We'll do that next. We are back with Kevin Williamson, Deputy Managing Editor of National Review and author of The Politically Incorrect Guide to Socialism. Richard Poe is also here. He's the co-author of Shadow Party. Both of those books you need to read. Something that has been bothering me about all of this is if you want to collapse the system, you have to ensure that it's done quietly. Because you can't, if you're doing it for money, you can't have instability in America. And how many Americans will fight to their dying breath if they know that they've been had? This is why it has to be discredited. We showed you in the book where people were arrested in France for writing the coming insurrection. They were arrested for it. And the last couple of pages talk about, if we're exposed, we've got to act now. Because they can't let that out. The coming insurrection is about what's happening now over in Europe and what's coming here, and also what is happening now in Egypt and all over the Middle East. So you can't balkanize it because you can't make money. And really this is about money and power. I believe the communists are being used, quite frankly. Let's just divvy the people up that he has here. He has thugs. That's the union muscle. Organize, Saul Alinsky said, organize the organized. Don't care about the individual people. Organize the organized. Get the leadership and use that muscle. But they mean muscle. Remember when Andy Stern said, if we're going to use the power of persuasion, and if that doesn't work, we'll use the persuasion of power. Right? Now, this line, thinkers. These guys are the brains. They're brilliant, brilliant people. This is a guy, John Holdren, our science czar, who said we should sterilize people, put sterilants in our drinking water to be able to, reduce the population. That's him. This is Cass Sunstein. This is John Podesta. This is Cass's wife. Now, John Podesta is the guy from Center for American Progress, which is the think tank that helped put together the Apollo Alliance and everything else. Cass Sunstein, John Podesta, this is George Soros's central bank. This is when we exposed Van Jones, he went here. Who's the EPA? Carol Browner, right? She just left this week to go to Center for American Progress. Can you tell me anything about it, Kevin? About Center for American Progress and how it's just a beehive?
Well, yeah, it's sort of a left-wing clearinghouse. I mean, it's a way that lots and lots of donations and lots of money and lots of manpower can be coordinated to various different projects. I mean, they got a lot of different things going on, but they do have a hand in almost every little tendril of the left.
So there's the thinkers. These are the, I would say these are the doers, organizers, and Marxists. These are the people that actually believe it. And this is media control. So now look who you have here. Who you have here? You have thugs, thinkers, Marxists, media control. But if you balkanize it, if you collapse the system and the American people know it, they'll revolt. Remember, it's bottom up, top down, inside out. That's the theory, right? So people are going to rise up. They want you to rise up. They need you to rise up. That's why they have the thugs and the Marxists. Because if you won't do it, they'll do it. And then you will beg them. Beg them. I want to be secure. I want to be secure. Come down. But if you're on to them, and you know they want you to come down, what happens? What did Octavia do in Rome? I really truly believe the O for Obama should be Octavia. He is the first Roman emperor. Remember, Rome is a republic, and then it just falls into chaos. And so Octavia comes in. The bottom rises up. Make it stop, Octavia. And so he comes down. But he leaves them with the illusion of a republic. He leaves them with the illusion of the republic. So the real question here is what is the illusion of the republic that George Soros has planned? Because if we all know this guy is in bed with all of these guys, and we know that, you won't sit down unless, remember this guy said, we have an FBI agent who infiltrated his Weather Underground, who said they will kill 25 million Americans. 25 million Americans just won't do it, just won't sit down for it. So they will kill 25 million. Okay. So we know he's willing to. But wouldn't it be easier if this guy could convince the youth? This guy could convince faith groups. These guys could just keep everybody in line. These guys could figure out the way to make it look good. There has to be the illusion. There has to be the illusion of the republic remaining. That's what you look for. That's, I think, what's coming in the next year. Is the illusion that these guys are somehow or another ratted out to satisfy after you cry out, top down, protect us. Back in just a second. We're back with Kevin Williamson. He's the Deputy Managing Editor of National Review and author of The Politically Incorrect Guide to Socialism. You must have it. And Richard Poe, co-author of Shadow Party, a book that I don't think I would have believed 3 years ago. And it is Melt Your Brain. It's unbelievable. It is truly, truly unbelievable. Both of those are must-reads. We were just talking. Do we have a picture of, you know who? Do we have that ready yet? Do you have the picture? I asked for one. Because we were talking, Richard and I were talking off air here a second ago. And I said, we went into the break and I said, okay, let me tell you what I really think. Let me tell you what I really think. I really think there is somebody who is going to come in and give us the illusion of the republic. Because that's what you have to do. You have to have craziness, radicals in control, let everybody know that they're radicals in control, and then swoop in and have somebody stop it, but that somebody is part of the top down. But the American people don't know it. You know, and I know, that he is part of this group. I mean, we know it. We also know that George Soros is part of it. Do we have the picture? I'm just going to say it if we don't have the picture. Who goes here? If everything falls apart and everybody says, he was part of it, you go and you clean up some of this mess. You clean up this mess. You clean up the obvious people. Most people don't know these guys. You leave them, but you know this guy. You don't know that guy. You clean up the obvious people. And you say, my gosh, we just got the bad guys. But somebody who's part of this needs to be the leader of it. I think it's Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, is she not part of Center for American Progress?
Hillary Clinton was the founder of the Center for American Progress, along with her partner, George Soros. They were the two moving principals who began it in 2002, 2003. And originally, it was widely seen and discussed in the left-wing press, such as The Nation, as Hillary Clinton's think tank. It was described in The Nation as a government in the wings waiting for President Hillary Clinton to come in. And indeed, although Hillary was not elected this time around, her Center for American Progress, her personal think tank, again I'm quoting from the left-wing press, her personal think tank, as we've been discussing, provided many of the people who are now in Obama's administration, which is a very strange thing when you think that that Obama and Hillary are supposed to be deadly enemies and rivals, and then
all
her
of a sudden,
think tank fills up his administration with her people.
Isn't that strange? Because I don't think Hillary Clinton, I don't think she's a Marxist. Is she a Marxist?
I think she is. She's a genuine leftist. I believe she has she unlike Mr. Soros, I believe she has a genuine belief in her progressive agenda.
Yes, she's an extreme liberal progressive, but she's not a Marxist communist. She's not these guys, right?
No.
Yeah, she's not these.
Definitely not.
Okay, so Hillary Clinton comes in because this is her government. As you just said, this is her government. Shadow party. This is it. She set it up. business people. She can help rat these people out. They're useful idiots. They're useful idiots. Now that, I want you to know, is a conspiracy theory. That one's just me. I'm trying to figure out how do you... So that one is a conspiracy theory. Let me go to, we have Jason. Where's Jason? Jason.
You've been talking over the past couple years about, the czars and the different people in the government, and they're somewhat a little vague. So I was wondering, tangibly speaking, like, for example, Cass Sunstein, you refer to him as like a tweaker of regulations. So can we pinpoint perhaps several examples of specific regulations he has tweaked over the course of a couple of years?
Two that are just happening right now. Right now they're going after guns. They're going after your guns, and they're going to do it through regulation. They are just regulating, well, this gun is really for sports. This one's not. So they're going to tweak the regulations. You have it on guns. There was another one that happened this week. You have it currently happening in healthcare. Kevin, what else do you have?
Well, I mean, the interesting thing about Cass Sunstein and his position is that he has a hand in every regulation, right?
Yep.
And I mean, there's nothing that goes through the White House in terms of regulatory invention that he doesn't have a hand on. And what he's been put in charge of is this panel that's supposed to review all of the federal regulations, looking for things that are onerous or obsolete or outdated or anything like that. And to put a guy like that in charge of a project like that just simply, suggests that you're not really serious about getting it done, and that you don't, in fact, want to reduce the level of the regulatory state. It's sort of like the fact that Joe Biden's been put in charge of negotiating with Republicans about deficit reduction. I mean, if you don't want to do anything, obviously you put Joe Biden in charge of it, who slept through the speech, knocked out. So, I think what people often overlook about the way the regulatory state works is that it's a way to implement public policy without paying for it. You can get businesses to do the things that you want them to do, and it never actually shows up on the books. We spend about $1.7 trillion a year in regulatory compliance costs for American businesses. That's more than businesses pay in corporate income taxes. It's more than all corporate profits in America put together. And it's a really nice kind of low-cost way to get your agenda put out with A, not having to have a vote in Congress over it, B, ever having to answer to the voters for it, or C, ever having to put it on the books and pay for it.
Let me show you this. Indoctrination of youth and control the message, we'll do that. Control the message, he's doing. Education regulation, control big business, he's doing. Electoral stuff he's involved with, not in this. I don't know about that. Religion, they're currently going after religions. Charity, he's going after this. History, I don't know. This one is really important, indoctrinate youth and control the message, because his official title is the head of the Office of Information. That sounds ominous. Back in just a second. Back with Kevin Williamson, Richard Poe, and Mark, who has a question. Mark.
Yes. The Constitution being challenged so much over the last couple of years between Obamacare and the appointment of czars and now even Libya, I wanted to ask, is there any provisions, or are there any provisions in the Constitution to protect it, even against a sitting president, for its own self-preservation? Are there any provisions?
Yeah, I think there's tons of them, but I don't think that they've crossed. I don't think that you have to have blatant crossings.
Well, there's been nothing to protect the Constitution against the Supreme Court for the last 50 years. As excited as people get over that question, I find it hard to get that excited, because I just don't think we've lived under the Constitution during my lifetime at all.
I would agree.
And probably not for years before that. So we're muddling through, but in terms of actually restoring American constitutional government to the way it's supposed to be, I mean, interesting experiment.
Yeah, but I think that leads to real trouble. That would throw the country into civil war. Let me go to Catherine. Where are you, Catherine? Hi, Catherine.
Hi. President Obama recently visited Brazil, and there he commended their offshore drilling program. He told them that we would be their best customer, and yet he's an advocate for their program, but he supports a ban here in the U.S. How do you think he justifies that?
Easy. First of all, you left out a couple of parts. He has given, with our money, our tax dollars, this is corporate welfare, to an oil company. Given our tax dollars to their oil company, their state-run oil company. Then, right before he went, he gave them something that he won't give anybody in the United States, drilling rights, and the deepest, where Deep Horizon was, that same area, he gave Petrobras clearance to go and have storage facility there, and I believe drilling rights there. So it's beyond that. And can anybody figure out why he's doing that? Anybody have a reason? Because this is, what'd you say? Well, George Soros did have money. Yeah.
Of it, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a
That's
former
right.
stockholder of it, et cetera, et cetera. But I think with this one you go to Marxism. The president of Brazil is a Marxist guerrilla revolutionary that spent time in prison. And what is the main goal of the real Marxists, the believers of this, not the Hillary Clintons of the world, but the believers of the Marxist thing, that we're the oppressor and we've been taking the land and the resources and everything else. So what better way to redistribute the wealth, take from the rich Americans and give it to the poor country and the poor people in Brazil. That's all that is a redistribution of wealth. Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Back in just a second. Richard Poe and Richard, who's got a question here.
Yes, Glenn. Do you see the plot that Stephen Lerner's planning to take down J.P. Morgan and the New York Stock Exchange working? And if not, do they have an alternative plan?
Oh, I think they have a million. I think they have a million of them. The stock exchange, we exposed on this program audio that we recorded Stephen Lerner, SEIU, saying he's going to take down the New York Stock Exchange and J.P. Morgan Chase. And they were going to do it by encouraging people to not pay their loans. First thing, the former Acorn, what used to be known as Acorn in New York, is already doing that. There are other groups already targeting J.P. Morgan Chase. There is a website out of Baltimore that is encouraging people, don't pay your mortgages. It's happening. It's starting to happen. Let me go to Rich over here. Hi, Rich.
Hey, Glenn. Why isn't Stephen Lerner being investigated for economic terrorism?
Anybody have it?
I could say that because I believe that it's part of the pressure from above and pressure from below strategy, which Glenn has talked about many times on this show. You can't have a revolution come up from the street just from people like Steve Lerner acting without authorization. They have to have authorization from above. You can't have a bunch of peasants with pitchforks run into the street and overturn a government. You have to have traitorous elements within the government itself who support them and protect them and prevent them from being investigated. And I would add that this Lerner fellow is not alone in practicing economic terrorism. Actually, George Soros himself has been accused by the Chinese military of being a quote-unquote financial terrorist. There was a book published in English in 2002 by two Chinese colonels called Unrestricted Warfare in its English version, and they were talking about all the different types of warfare that are now possible in the information age. They had a great deal of writing about George Soros and his activities, particularly in Southeast Asia during the so-called Asian flu collapse, and they referred to him explicitly as a financial terrorist, and they were not saying that out of hyperbole or out of showmanship. These were colonels in the Chinese army speaking militarily.
Okay. This is why I feel I have other things to do that I must, because the last thing we need are more revolutionaries on the street, and you will see what I have planned, and we'll be asking you to join me with soon. We'll be back in just a minute. Life was a complete and total wreck, but because of something that one man did about 2,000 years ago, I have my life back. Happy Easter, America. Good night.